What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How's everybody doing out there on this Wednesday, April 19th of 2023? David, I haven't found a way to replace you yet. Hi.
Hi. I currently have a cat staring at me somewhat out of frame. So if I look back, it's because I'm not used to it yet. I'm not used to something just staring at me.
I mean, no one can see us yet. We're not doing the live stream thing yet, so you're kind of talking, and no one knows what the hell you're talking about.
And our brilliant guest.
Yes, yeah, but Buddy's always doing something back there. Cat, which isn't technically your cat, but that's a story for another day. But before we get into anything fun, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars for us on Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Sell everyone like, hey, you know those other shows that have guests? This show has pretty fucking cool guests too. So go listen to them, because their lineup is as good as anybody else's. So definitely go tell people about us. Follow us on the socials at the Alex Cuesta Show. And I just have to give one quick shout out. Stephen A. Smith, you're based as hell. He talked to Clay Travis and people, the wokies were trying to go at him. And in typical Stephen A. fashion, it's no secret, he's friends with Sean Hannity, and Sean Hannity is who he is, but he's still someone who's persona non grata for a bunch of the lefties. But for Stephen A. to come back out and do exactly what you're supposed to do when the woke mob comes after you, and just basically came out and said, fuck you. I don't care. I enjoyed my conversation. I'm going to keep doing it. And this is just kind of the guy he is. So love him or hate him. Shout out to Stephen A. Absolutely based of him to come out and do. And I know he's not going to back down. He's not a guy that's afraid of getting suspended. So he's been suspended plenty of times. So good on you. So before we get into anything else this week, last week's show, we had an awesome guest, Ethan Van Sciver. I said his name right again, Dave. I did it. I know his name now.
It's not difficult, so it's a good thing you did.
Shut up, David. But Ethan Van Sciver came on. He is the founder of All Caps Comics. You'll definitely know him from his time as a DC comic artist. Basically, Green Lantern guy, created one of the most iconic villains in all of DC. So go look at it there. Go visit his website in Indiegogo for Cyberfrog. Go support him, because we need more good independent work away from the nonsense going on in the mainstream comic industry. But this week, we have a fun guest. We have someone that if you're not following him on Twitter yet, especially if you're not listening to his podcast, then what the hell are you doing? You're listening here. You should be listening there as well, because we talk about similar things. He talks about them with much more intelligence than we do, because David and I are kind of dumb. But he is UnWokable.
Kinda is a little bit.
Kind of dumb. I'm only giving us a kind of. Shut up. It's my show. Be quiet. But UnWokable from the UnWokable podcast. What's going on?
Not much, man. Thanks for having me here. I listen to the show. Big fan. You have great guests, great commentary, and I'm just happy to be here, man.
I appreciate
Someone
it, man.
listens to the show. That's great.
You know what? It's like funny, because it was like, we were on Twitter doing our thing, and then all of a sudden UnWokable started following us. I think I texted David. I'm like, UnWokable follows us. Like, that's dope. Like, awesome. We were like, let's go. Like, it's the little things, especially, the real life that is Twitter. It's
it's a mix of real life and fantasy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of cesspool fantasy stuff. But so your podcast can be found everywhere, right? The UnWokable Podcast.
Yep. Yes, it can. Yes. YouTube, Rumble. I am currently demonetized on YouTube, so follow me on Rumble.
It's a badge of honor at this point.
Yeah, any good creator is demonetized.
Yes. No. Straight up, and they won't give me a reason. They keep saying they keep saying I'm using other people's content, but this is what I do. This right here. So I don't really know how that's possible. I don't know. They suck.
And it's also, they don't abide by the fair use clause either, which is something that we all use as creators.
Well, they do for some people.
I was going to say, it depends on who you are.
Right. Yeah.
The repressive tolerance, right?
It's equity. It's equity.
Yep. Absolutely. So within your name, obviously, UnWokable, you are against wokeness, against the whole movement. And I want to jump right into that, because a lot of people, if you're not very well versed in this type of stuff, a lot of people on the right throw around woke, and people might be listening and going, what does that mean? People throw it around. All we know is it means that people are awake to the oppression and the meanness of America. So in your terms, what's the best way that you try to describe to somebody that comes up to you and is like, what is woke?
It's a Marxist identitarian political cult that seeks to use postmodern manipulations of people to remove their individual identity and replace it with a collective, activist-based political identity. That's what it is. And it's not limited to just the left, I think, or and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later. Yep. But it's a mode of manipulation, and it's using identity, whether it's right, left, in between, to manipulate people into making them bend to your will. James Lindsay, and we all bow before that altar, right?
Yes, we do.
Pun intended. I'm a Christian, so but James would find that funny. But we all eat at that table, so to speak. And he just says, calling anything that you want to control racist until you control it, or sexist until you control it, or genderist or ageist or colonialist or whatever ist you want to put at the end of it, until you control it. And that's pretty much it. It's weaponizing empathy. And I am heartened in a manner of speaking that people are really, I think, starting to get that on an intrinsic kind of almost knee-jerk reaction out of understanding of that. But it does surprise me sometimes that there are so many people that just don't really either encounter it as much or just are completely lost in just, I want to be a good person. And
and I think we do encounter it. And I think what people realize, and I listen to Tim Pool, and I'm not a person that's afraid of it. I feel like it's like a persona non grata thing on podcasts. You're not supposed, or on radio, you're not supposed to admit that you listen to other people. I have no problem doing that. I don't care. I listen to Tim. I think Tim's a pretty cool dude. Tim is not on the right at all. Still, Tim is a free speech guy that's on the left. That's always been Tim Pool. But he kind of was saying, in like when it comes to like wokeness and things like that, that it's not an ideology and things like that. Do you think that there is actual ideology to wokeness that kind of grounds it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can trace it all the way back to postmodernism. You can trace it back to Marx. I mean, James again does this very, very well. And the funny part about this is you can trace fascism back to Marx too. But wokeness is basically just saying, okay, where Marx dealt with class conflict, wokeness takes that class and creates an identity statement. It's a whiteness as property, right? Is the big one you can point to, that if they your intrinsic, the color of your skin, your status, your privilege is your property, and therefore you are engaged in a class warfare based upon your identity, not so much the coinage you have in your pocket or not. And so they just branch that out a little bit, and then they add the postmodern aspect to it, which is the denial of rational linear thinking, objective reality. And they do that pretty much just to say, okay, well, no matter what you say, because I am who I am right. And you can't fight against that. You actually saw that with Vivek Ramaswamy and Don Lemon today, where he's basically saying, well, as a black man, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, how about just as a person with a brain, let's talk about something. Well, a lot of them can't do that. And so they inject identity. That's why I call them identitarians. Yep. Marxist identitarians. They inject identity to avoid the argument because they can't win the argument.
And the thing is, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, it's funny because you see those signifiers all over the place, especially in almost any like hot button topic at the time. Someone will come out, let's say it's gun control at the point. As a vet, as someone who owns a gun or something else.
David Hogg is the perfect example of that as a survivor.
Yeah, but either way, exactly. Either way, and it's from anyone. They come out and they signify that they are something. So it's just like they're trying to act like they have some kind of superiority in this argument. And it could be absolute bunk what they say after it. But they try to make a point.
They assert your privilege, and then because they've asserted your privilege and laid that upon you without your permission, without your consent, right? Then they flip it, right? Well, because you are historically oppressive, I now get to be the oppressor. And that's just goes back to Kendi, man. And others before him, but basically saying, if the only way to end discrimination is to discriminate. And two wrongs make a right. That's pretty much what he's saying. And so it's that action over and over and over and over again, whether you're talking about teachers to kids or politicians to other politicians or really the media to the public is really bad with it, and it's it's a cancer, man. It really is. It's a mind cancer. It eats you up. And I tweeted this out earlier with Don Lemon, commenting on Vivek's video with him this morning. 2012 Don Lemon would have agreed with Vivek.
Yeah. Yep.
But 2023 Don Lemon is incapable of seeing past his own skin color. And even when he has a, quote, brown person sitting in front of him, because he's not black, right?
Yeah. He's lowercase brown, not uppercase brown. There's a difference. Well, he's politically brown.
Right. He politically brown. Yeah. Well, but that's true, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what they say. You can have the black voice or the black face and not the black voice. It's why Larry Elder can be the blackface white supremacy.
Yep. I forget, it was one of the congresswomen, was it not Jay Powell? One of them that said that they weren't politically black. I think it was one of the squad members or someone like that.
Or maybe Presley?
Or was it Presley? I think it might have been Anna Presley that said like they weren't politically black. They were just, regular black. You can't be, just a person that is black or something like that.
We need black voices, not just black.
It was. Well, Nicole Hannah-Jones said it. There's been lots of people. Iona Presley's the one you're speaking of.
Yes.
And she said we don't need more black faces without black voices that don't speak with this voice. And what that is, that's the political identity. And you can have a, quote, black voice and not be black. Shaun White, but I mean,
Rachel Dolezal, whatever.
right. Anybody like that, because they will give you, even if you're white, Asian, whatever we want to, they'll give you a pass to a certain extent as long as you're preaching the gospel.
Yes.
Right. And if you're preaching the gospel, then they give you a pass unless it becomes politically expedient to throw you under the bus.
And I think you mentioned, that, people walk around and they're kind of oblivious to this. And I think that there's been, for lack of a better term, grooming to this extent, right? Because when I was growing up, is when political correctness was really taking storm on media. And what is political correctness? Political correctness are things you're not allowed to say, or you'll get in trouble for saying it. And what do we see now? And Bill Maher is a perfect example. Bill Maher was a person.
Was his show.
Show. And then he got in trouble on Politically Incorrect and had to leave, hence why Real Time started on HBO. And we've seen this go on and on and on. And it's like cancel culture isn't new. The left trying to control language isn't new. And this isn't only the left. This is your ridiculous, insane right who are rearing their freaking ugly head. And we'll talk about them later because it's not, we talk about leftism, this and that. But there's plenty of people on the right that I don't agree with. There are, your monarchist people on the right can go fuck off. They're insane. Like, we never need to go back to a monarchy. That is the dumbest idea ever. But it's like, we've been groomed to this point. All of us have come to that point, right? Yeah. And I think we all kind of live in those norms, even though we don't realize it. And now we're all waking up to it and going, no, screw that.
I've been watching. Oh, I'm sorry. But I've been watching little shorts of the Chappelle Show and Tosh.0 on YouTube. And, I'm pretty jaded to it, like in terms of making sure that I'm going to say what I want to say, right or left doesn't really matter. I get myself in trouble and I don't earn friends that way, but I'm going to say it because I don't really have a filter switch when it comes to what I believe. But watching these little clips, I start to go, oh, like I going, well, that's funny as hell. Okay. It's real funny. And I don't know if I'm older than you guys. I think
I'm 34.
Okay. I'm 38. So we're right around the same time.
David's a baby.
Yeah. So Chappelle Show came out when I was literally a senior in high school. It was the thing. And everybody loved Chappelle Show. Everybody loves Chappelle Show. And I connect with that part of myself still and know that it's funny. I laugh like it's funny. I have the nostalgia of it being funny, but there's that little ink in the back of your neck that goes, oh, is someone seeing me laugh at this? Is this too far? Is this taboo? And it's like, we've so sanitized our culture to speech that I'm really concerned, because if I feel that, the generations below me are not going to be able to tolerate it. And that's why we see so much of the trigger warnings and the triggered mess that we see on campuses and stuff, is because they literally do not have the emotional capability to cope with somebody disagreeing with them, or somebody even just making a joke about something that they find offensive because they feel everything should cater to them. And their feelings.
Narcissist.
Yeah, it really. I mean, but it's an inbred narcissist. It's a narcissism. It's not something that, they're born with. It's something they're trained into, and that's every day in school, church, family life, or just what I say. Peer pressure is the strongest force on the planet, man.
Without a doubt,
it really is.
Yep.
It really is, and so that'll get you every time too.
Yeah, Daniel Tosh would not be able to do the "Is That Racist" segment at all. Right now. He would not. And it's one of the most funny segments that he did. And he would not be able to do it. And I have to say, David and I had on Lord Miles Rutledge on the show. And he gave no fucks. And and he said things that I wouldn't say when he was like, "Oh, shalom, my niggas." I'm like, I wouldn't actually have said that normally, but he said it like 9 times on this show already.
Of it and was even worse.
And he was walking up to the Taliban saying it. So it's like the guy's insane, but it's like it's things like that even in the 90s wouldn't have been a big deal to say, right? You could say it. People understood what you were saying. But like you said, now we have to look over our shoulder when we say things because I think it's mostly not necessarily because we care about what we're going to say, but if the wrong person hears it and we get mobbed and they claim an identity, we're wrong anyway. Yep. So it's like we've seen that the leftists, we're living in Herbert Marcuse's repressive tolerance, right? The leftists get toleration. Anybody that's not on the left, an anti-revolutionary in Mao's China, gets no quarter. And that's where we're living. So I think it's less of guys like me, you, and David caring about what we're saying or caring about offending people, and no more of that. The repercussions on us will be real, that we don't get the benefit of the doubt anymore.
Real world, can ruin your entire existence, kind of real. But I think it stems from, for some reason, we've brought, or we've stopped the ability for successive generations to self-deprecate.
Yep.
Yes.
Right. You know what I mean? It's like when I was in high school, I went through a period where I was pretty rotund, right? I was a bigger kid, and so I would just walk up to people like, "Hey, I'm John. I'm fat." You know what I mean? Like, and I just put it right out there. You know what I mean?
Like you couldn't see it, but here it is.
If you ever watch Game of Thrones, and little Tyrion Lannister goes around, he says, "Wear your insecurity as a shield."
Yep.
Right. And I think that we've now somehow taught kids to be fragile instead of being anti-fragile, right? That if they bend, they will break. Not if they bend, they may grow stronger. And humor is a huge part of that. It's why people can't take people like me or James Lindsay or some others on Twitter. They cannot take it, and they want to see them gone because a lot of what he does is tongue in cheek to just mock you a little bit. And that's all it takes, right? And they will lose their ever-loving mind. They will lose it. And sometimes that's fun, but sometimes you can get in a dangerous situation where somebody will make it their mission to end your professional existence, to end your public existence, to end your relationships with people. And that is right and left now. I mean, we're seeing it rise on the right. So it's something that I think we, as those of us who do what we're doing right now, need to tackle head on and refuse to bend the knee.
Absolutely.
And say, I refuse to do what it is that you're requiring me to do.
And all three of us here take a chance every time we do this, right? Like you have more popularity than we do, but Dave and I, we have 9 to 5 day jobs. We take a chance by being on here because they could discover this podcast and listen and be like, listen, we can't employ you anymore. And that's a chance that David and I know that we took when we did this. I talked with David and I was like,
when we were streaming daily at that point,
when we were having Billboard Chris come on the show, I officially said to Dave, like, there's no going back now. Like we're planting our flag having a guy like Billboard Chris on the show, and we were full send.
And it's funny because the thing is, we're planting our flag on women are women. That was our flag.
With puberty blockers. That's an easy thing to plant your flag to.
That child mutilation is inherently criminal.
Yes. That we make fun of third world countries for doing it, but for some reason, because it's an accessory now for parents, it's cool.
We don't just make fun of them. We sanction them.
We call them savages too.
I mean, we sometimes invade them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we've gone round the bend of Western values and pushing that so much that you do as I say, not as I do. Right. I mean, it's a hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. It's woke hypocrisy. It's rooted in hypocrisy. Yeah. It demands hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. And because one cannot be atop the privilege matrix unless one is a hypocrite, because you're claiming an intrinsic superiority in that vein. It's amazing how they just flip it.
And, when you were talking about how people are just kind of like, the kids right now are just weak. This generation is weak. They can't disagree. They have to be in their bubble. And I think one of the main reasons is because wokeism is obviously Marxism. It's a collective theory. So they're looking for strength in the collective, where before we were taught to look for strength as an individual, right? Mm-hmm. Find the individual strength.
Or in our family.
In our family, in our church, in something that we connect to. And this is a perfect transition to our next segment here. Your heavy support for Vivek Ramaswamy as president, very outward on Twitter. He's a guy that I don't know, what you believe of him, what you think. The guy has balls of steel. Yep. He is very much an individual. He speaks his mind. And if anyone doesn't know the story of Vivek Ramaswamy, I've read Woke Inc. I don't agree with everything he wrote in Woke Inc., but his insight is valuable. He was a legitimate, big-time player in corporate America, in hedge funds and things like that. He's a billionaire. He doesn't need to be doing any of this. And what he did when he saw that the rich, wealthy hedge funders were full of shit and not actually doing anything that they said they were going to do, he decided to start a competitive one and started outpacing them. Now, I don't know the status of it. I think someone was like, but didn't it fail? I don't know if it failed or not, but that doesn't matter because he's a man that stands on principles, whether you agree with them or not. And that's my transition over an individual, because Vivek is obviously an individual. What draws you to the Vivek Ramaswamy that you are just very outwardly, openly supporting him for president?
Okay, well, for starters, he is his own man, and he's a new breed of politician. Mm-hmm. He represents a new generation of politician. He's a year younger than me. You know what I mean? And that's both a strength and a weakness. Okay, I'm not going to say that, being president of the United States is the hardest job on the planet. Okay, and obviously you're going to get pros and cons with age on either end of the spectrum. But what drew me to Vivek is that, for starters, I was diving into what wokeness was as early as 2015. Yeah. I'm originally from Jeff City, Missouri, which is about 30 minutes from Columbia, Missouri, which is about an hour from Ferguson, Missouri. Okay. And so MU, the University of Missouri, blew up in 2015 the way that we saw George Floyd blow up in 2020 all over the country. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it was kind of a primer. And I wrote papers on this as an educator because I immediately started to point in on what it was that was happening there, which was this Marxist identitarian method of trying to take over institutions. And what I did work on it here and there, and then 2020 happened. I encountered it at my own university, University of Oklahoma, the quote reddest state in the country. Not really. And I could see that there was economic incentives to what was happening, because nothing happens without money.
Exactly.
Nothing. Okay. There's somebody funding it somewhere, and you can throw it at George Soros. You can throw it at lots of different people that were more well known at the time, whether it's Barack Obama, the Democratic Party in general,
the establishment, right?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Throw them into it. 100%. They are huge. I'm done just blaming the left. People like Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, all those fuckers on the establishment, right? I'm tired of them.
Yeah, no, they're swamp creatures, and they don't hold any real. They're very woke in their mindset, where they don't really hold any values except for the values that get them votes, and so they'll flip flop this and there. But usually they'll speak the truth because, they've been in Washington so long, they see themselves as being insulated. But with Vivek, I was really connecting with James Lindsay up to this point. We were talking a lot. And that's the cool part about James, is that if you reach out to him, he's going to talk to you because he actually wants to teach this stuff. Mm-hmm. If he would have made, I just want to make this real quick aside, because if James would have made all of the money that he could have made off of the things that he has put out, he would be one of the richest people in this space, if not the richest person in the space, because so many people have borrowed things from him. But he does that because he's actually a true believer in trying to stop this. And so James connected all these dots for me when it came to that. I had already connected some of myself with my work as in music and art history and things like that, and just philosophy. But Vivek's book, Woke Inc., slapped open this whole other aspect of this that is probably the most important aspect, which is the ESG, stakeholder capitalism, monetary incentive for this to be happening. Mm-hmm. And I was dealing with a situation here where I'm arguing with an OU economics professor during school board meetings and during town hall meetings here in Norman, Oklahoma, the only place in Oklahoma to defund the police, which is ridiculous. And I'm like, why is this economics professor so wrapped up in this? And then I read Vivek's book, and it just opened up an entire facet of this that I wasn't seeing before. And then I got to connect my own dots. And Vivek has also been, at least with me, pretty open about responding to things. If I had a question, I'll shoot anybody a DM. If you don't answer me, you don't answer me, right? But
that's the same way I am.
Right. I mean, you got to be. That's what Twitter's for, right?
Absolutely.
But and would answer questions, and then I would just watch him talk. We'd communicate a little bit, retweeting and things. But what I did immediately after reading Woke Inc. for the second time, which I did in about 2 weeks, and you go through and read little sections of it here and there, in addition to just reading the whole thing front to front.
There's a ton of information in there inside baseball that Vivek gives.
Tons of information. Is that I also researched him. Because if you all know me on Twitter, I'm not the most trusting person in the world. Okay, it's verify then trust for me, and so I did my homework on Vivek as I was reading his book multiple times, and I saw that he, was being touted by the WF. I saw that he had connections to Soros, and these are things that I take very seriously because they mean something, and. I reach out to him. He's straight with me. He's like, dude, I'm trying to deal with this right now. And this is before he's running for president, by the way. Right. Yep. And he's like, and basically the same thing that he's suing them now for, right? Which he's the only one that's had a balls enough to do that. Tulsi Gabbard's claimed the same thing. I don't really trust Tulsi, but other people have claimed the same thing. But Vivek's like, screw you, man. I'm going to take your ass to court. You know what I mean? And so I did my homework on him, and I have the first, I'm going to frame it one of these days when he becomes president. The very first tweet saying Vivek Ramaswamy for president, because I not only got his mindset and this vast amount of knowledge, this big connection from Woke Inc., I also got the reassurance through actually challenging him on things and him coming back and us having dialogue, which I think is the most important thing, about who he really was, right? And so when I heard rumors that he was going to be or thinking about running for president from, just people in the background of the movement, right? And I just reached out and said, dude, I'm Team Ramaswamy. I said, you let me know. Here's my tweet from September 2021, and I'm Team Ramaswamy, because even if, which I think he can win, by the way, I really do. I think that he really could. But even if you don't win, you are going to so raise the level of discourse and the actual issues in this campaign that most, I think, even the other two main competitors just bowl over and wouldn't talk about it all were he not in the conversation.
UnWokable for press secretary. UnWokable for press secretary. Let's do it.
Oh, he could do better than me, but I will. This is the thing. I'm not a shill. Okay, I don't get paid by him. But when I commit to something, I commit. And here's the other aspect of why I decided, because I am a Trump fan. I actually like DeSantis. There was a point where I was going back and forth on, which one I'm going to support, right? And but I watch Twitter heavily. I watch the media heavily. I've actually helped people do studies on trends and the way that things speed up and slow down and where the bots are and all this stuff. And first of all, Trump's on no social media at this time, so he has no voice unless you're on Truth, and Truth is just a big echo chamber. I mean, it is what it is, but it is just.
Well, I mean, he sold NFTs on Instagram pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, no, I mean,
yesterday it was
the man could sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves. Okay. I mean, he could sell anything, but it's
awesome phrase.
But he had no voice. And what I did start to see that really started to bother me was this artificial get behind DeSantis movement where I know that there are bots, some of the people that you like and trust on Twitter right now, and I'm not going to name names because I don't want to start anything, but that you like and trust are artificially inflated. And they were
being mean to Max Nordu, okay?
Well, and just even, I'm not going to name names. I'm tempted, but it's and if you get me going later on, maybe I will. But you saw this. I don't like artificial narratives.
No.
That's what brought me against wokeness. Was that this is an artificial manufactured narrative. And you had in the vacuum of Trump being gone, DeSantis doing good things in Florida, okay?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And doing a good job there and standing up and COVID and all those things, right? But people starting to parrot the exact same talking point from all corners of Twitter sphere, all corners of the internet.
Which is what we make fun of the left for all the time.
Exactly. NPCs.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, and I couldn't stand it. And so I started calling people out for it, to be honest. And, James Lindsay's off Twitter at this point. I'm like, what are you all doing? Okay. I mean, It's like you're making a mockery of what actually could be for DeSantis a real movement.
Yep.
But you're trying to out-Trump Trump on social media, which is absolutely, even though he's not here, you can't do it. Just like you can't outsell Trump. Nope. Trump is his own mouthpiece. DeSantis is sitting back and letting all this kind of army of people I like and respect. Okay. And I will name one name, Chris Rufo, for example. Yep. Right. Is a guy that I had a pretty long-standing behind-the-scenes dialogue with, relationship, gave him lots of information, shared things, all these things, and
has
really
done great work
him.
Too. Chris has done great work.
He's
integral to the fight. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But I have a beef with him because he's first of all, he went from 150,000 followers to 400,000 followers overnight. And anybody who's tried to grow a Twitter account organically knows that is incredibly, almost impossible. I mean, and of course, he was on Fox News. He's going to get that stuff. But, yeah. I mean, James Lindsay has been on Twitter since it began. And he has just now getting close to 400,000 followers. Yep. And Chris, that's manufactured. And there's all kinds of different other people that fall into that category. And then I saw them start attacking people, not just big people, not just, was it Alex
Berkowitz? Yeah.
Yeah, and or Laura Loomer or those, but people like me for just asking questions or just challenging their narrative, right? And I'll do that every time. I will play devil's advocate every single time because I see it. If it appears manufactured, I want to falsify my hypothesis. And so I will challenge the narrative. And if I get this kind of, really, I see it as a woke response.
Absolutely.
To my questioning of what it is you're doing, then that's a huge red flag for me. And so that turned me off to DeSantis. Whether it's DeSantis himself, he's running that campaign, and it is a campaign, even though he hasn't announced.
Yeah.
And Trump has his own baggage, right? I mean, I like Trump, and I think we would all be in a much better position if Trump were in the White House. I mean, I think that's pretty
significantly
obvious. Yeah. But it's what I was searching for, somebody I could get behind full-throatedly, to where I don't agree with Vivek on everything. We disagree on one of my main issues, which is school choice, right? Which I think is pretty much a just big regime ploy. But Vivek when we talk about those kinds of things, he doesn't shut me down. He challenges me and I challenge him, and he goes, oh, I didn't think about that. And I go, oh, I didn't think about that. And we both get stronger. That's what we're supposed to be doing here, folks. Right? And any candidate who's going to take on the woke establishment media and the woke industrial complex, the woke governmental complex, and actually do anything about it is going to have to be able to weather being questioned without just having everybody on your team protect you. And that's what DeSantis is doing now. And so when Vivek decided to come out, I was actually getting ready to go on Tim Pool's show for the second time. And he didn't know that. I didn't, they reached out to me and said, hey, we got an announcement the day before I said, really, you're going to run? And he said, yeah. I said, I'm your guy, right? I'm gonna, I'm a Trump fan. But Vivek Ramaswamy represents to me a new generation of political thought in this country, a new generation of a mindset and how to actually deal with these problems, as he would say from a first personally standpoint, that he actually wrote the damn book on how to deal with this stuff that Trump and DeSantis and others have copied, right? Literally copy, which is great. You want them to copy it because that's how you deal with the problem.
And that was the purpose of Vivek writing the book. He wanted people to know how to fight this stuff from an insider perspective.
That's right. And he wanted to give it to the people who were going to run the country, right? And run the states, and so they could fight back. But what's happened is that you see this political people, so politicians will always take the credit for something, even if they haven't quite accomplished it.
All the time.
Because appearances matter. It's the narrative that matters. That is postmodernism.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? And
control the language.
Sorry, DeSantis has done that. Sorry, Trump has done that. Okay. And it's been to a detriment of what people like you and I are risking our lives, literally, our professional lives, and our stability to have this conversation right now. It throws us in the ditch when they do that. And what I saw immediately from Vivek switch to him was, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. He said, I'm going to talk about everything. I'm going to lead on these issues. I'm going to say the things that people, are, too afraid to say. And I'm going to do it in a way that is malleable, that shows I'm thinking about it, right? That I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to find them, right? And I'm going to do my best to implement them. And so my full-throated support of Vivek Ramaswamy is not just, this guy showed me some attention. I've had that before. It doesn't amount to much, okay? This is the real deal. This is a guy, and I think you're 34. People who grew up in our we both saw the pre-woke era, or the very end of what was probably the golden era in America, right? And then we watched the tip over the precipice into
9/11. Patriot Act was the end of it. Everything changed. The world, it's a different place after 01.
It is, but also but we had a bit of a lag, right? Like where it was, you still had freedom to think and freedom to, they were listening to everything you said now, but they weren't overtly coming after you because you're the wrong skin color, because you might identify with Trump, or because you think, any number of different conservative thoughts. But we saw this tipping point. I think Vivek lived through that same experience. And I think it's a millennial experience. I remember what it's like to not have cell phones.
Me too. Use AOL and have to do dial-up and listen for
on AIM.
But I don't remember how it feels.
Chat rooms. And I do remember being in a chat room and trying to be like 34. To see if I can get a hot chick to send me something, and not knowing that I was getting catfished by another dude who just got like a
they were all dudes.
Internet.
What are you talking about?
Gross. But so I want to kind of go over and give you a little, throw on the candidates as well, because I like your perspective on all of them. And I think you're full throat support of Vivek right now. I like Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he is all the good things that you're saying. But I've said to David, I said before, I'm going to wait and see approach right now, because I do like Ron DeSantis. I supported Donald Trump. At this point, I'm still in Camp Trump at the point. I voted for the man twice. I did have an issue with the way he handled January 6th. I thought he should have came out sooner. There are things I didn't like that he did, that he said, but I still think that at this point, he might be our best option. Now, I do acknowledge he's also officially a politician now, right? He's not an outsider anymore. He was in Washington for 4 years. He is officially a politician now. So the outsider narrative he's trying to portray is a bad one. Every single person that is with him, from Jared Kushner to any advisor, they're all people. And all the people that were involved in that, from your Steve Bannon, who I like Steve a lot, but to all people like that were in the White House, that were in this game, they're now not outsiders anymore. So they're all people. So again, I don't trust politicians, period. So I knew Trump was a businessman. I understand all politicians are liars. So I'm not sitting there looking for someone to be 100% honest with me, because bottom line is there's some things in government we probably shouldn't know, right? So it is what it is. So with Trump, he just needs to sit there, and I think he needs to get back on social media. I think he needs to stop attacking DeSantis for stupid shit, which it seems like he's kind of dumbed it down, and just keep on releasing these promo videos about what he plans to do, because they have been the strongest aspect. He's been the best foreign policy president we've had. God, I don't even know, before Reagan. Like, it's been such a long time.
Probably since Eisenhower.
Probably that we've had a truly non-interventionist. Like, again, he bombed Syria. He had shit in Yemen. Yeah, there are certain things that I believe that you walk in and the generals are like, this is occurring. This is happening. Whether you want it or not, just weather that storm. So I think there are certain things. With DeSantis, my trepidation with him is he was in Washington. He was a part of Congress. Yes, he was a founding Freedom Caucus member, and that's awesome. I don't know what his foreign policy is. I know nothing about it. The Ukraine thing kind of made me a little nervous. The fact that the Bushes like him, the fact that Paul Ryan likes him is concerning, because they're liberals. So that is not a good thing. And my concern with DeSantis is foreign policy, and can he govern the country? Florida is not the United States. Florida is not very much like the United States. They have some things, but the United States is very much different. What you could do in Florida, and we've seen Governor Rick Scott, we've seen Jeb Bush both be pretty good over in Florida, right? And then they come to the national stage and they get undressed, because things are not like that. Now, on top of that, Ron DeSantis isn't the greatest speaker, isn't the greatest debater. So going on the stage with Donald Trump, I don't know if he has a chance, because if Donald Trump makes you sweat, you're done. The moment he makes you sweat, it's over. And I can't see Ron DeSantis sticking to his guns. Trump's not a reporter. He's not going to own Trump. Trump doesn't let anybody own him.
Right.
When it comes to Vivek needs to not be so damn smart. I mean that in a way, because we come on here and we were talking and I asked you about wokeness, and you went into this definition with a bunch of words that if Vivek uses on the debate stage, people are going to look at him and be like, I can't vote for this guy. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. So I think for Vivek, one of the things he needs to do is figure out how to explain this in true layman's terms, how to truly explain ESG in layman's terms, not for somebody like the three of us who put ourselves in there and really want to know what ESG is. Environmental sounds great. What does it truly mean? Social, governance. Like, so what is stakeholder capitalism? He needs to really figure out a way to break this stuff down to layman's terms in a way that he can even explain it to Trump and DeSantis, because I don't know if they fully understand what it is, what social emotional learning, what ESG, what diversity, inclusion, equity, what all this is, what Vivek does. And that's his strength. But I think he needs to figure out, because the issue with genius intellect, smart people, is their stupid is still our genius. So he needs to figure out a way for someone to explain it to him in a true layman's term. And also, Trump has an advantage over all of them. He understands what the foreign policy is, the challenge as president. He understands what the actual economic challenges are as president. Vivek saw it from a business side, but Trump's going to look at him and say, kid, I was doing that for 40 years. Who are you? Like, I dealt with yours and I spit your hedge fund people in and out while I was making big buildings.
Yep.
So Vivek has a challenge there with Trump, because the business side is someone that they both understand that. And he has an advantage over both of them in that sense. So I think Vivek really needs to brush up on his foreign policy and those types of things and be very strong there, because just saying I'm anti-interventionalist, Trump's going to look at him and say, yeah, me too. I proved it.
Yeah.
What is your real policy? How are you going to do better than my Abraham Accords? How are you going to outdo what I did in NATO, which this war doesn't occur right now if I haven't made these people pay for their military to help out Ukraine, which is neither here nor there, but he could take credit for the power of NATO right now. Like, Vivek, are you going to be able to walk across the DMZ? Like I did that. Like he has a ton of foreign policy stuff that if he leans on, may be too much for either of them to weather if Trump does that. So if you are in contact with Vivek, though, that would be my advice. And if he can kind of make a dent in Trump, he can get a lot of people to his side, but it will be difficult if Trump plays it smart. Now, Trump could shoot himself in the foot. He's Trump. But that would be my advice to Vivek. And I like Vivek. I think he's good. And tell him to stop using the word democracy so much. Please, please tell him to stop using that, because that turns someone like me off, because I know what democracy means to the leftists. And I know he might not mean it that way, but the people that have been reading up on this stuff, we're going to look at it and say, just use republic. Use republic, please. Use constitutional. Yeah. Stop saying democracy.
Yeah. No, I think you made some excellent points there. First of all, I'm a student of the presidency. If you could see behind my big green sheet here, which you can't, you'd see picture of Kennedy and Republicans playing poker and all kinds of stuff. Thomas Jefferson and all that.
It's awesome.
I am a student of the presidency. And the thing about the presidency is that no matter how prepared you think you are for it, when you get into it, it hits you back.
Yep.
There are lots of books if you read.
That's why they age so much in 8 years.
Oh, sure. Except for Trump for some reason, right? But there is nothing that any candidate can do, save Joe Biden because he is the president, right? To out experience Trump. Yep. There's just nothing. If you're a one-term president and you have a gap, and then you come back and run. If George H.W. Bush would have come back and run against Bill Clinton in 1996, that'd have been a different race.
Absolutely.
That'd have been a completely different race because you now have the guy against the guy, and there's no experience gap. There's no learning curve.
Exactly.
And what I've always liked about Trump is that if he were to come back in, he's not going to have that learning curve.
Yep, exactly.
You know what I mean? He's gonna know what mistakes he made last time and do his best to remedy those.
Order 66, fire everybody.
Yes, well, and that's something Vivek has said too.
Yeah,
and you can take those lessons, but can
Vivek do it with that pressure?
Right. Well, and I believe he can, but
I hope so.
You never get to see what a guy is until you put him in the pressure cooker.
Exactly.
Right. And he knows that. Right. He knows that, and that's part of why he's doing his podcast, is because he's trying to talk to as many people that are smarter than him or know things about things he doesn't as he possibly can, which honestly is the exact same thing Trump did, just in a different way. Yeah. If you remember the lead up into 2015, like from basically 2014, 13 to 2015, Trump was on Fox and Friends every morning.
Yes, he was.
Once or twice or three times a week.
And I remember, David will remember this, and I said it to my parents while I was living at home in 2014, and when he was really ramping up his Fox News appearances, I said flat out, David will be the person. If Donald Trump runs for president, he's going to win. Yeah, I did it at that point. And my dad's like, he's not going to run. He did it a few times. I said, I don't care if he does or doesn't. If he does and he's serious, there's nobody that could beat him.
The man conquers things for a living.
Yes, he does.
Like that, his whole persona is, I win. Right? And that's it.
And I don't envy any of them. And I wouldn't envy Vivek's situation, because I don't know if I could sit in a room with a group of 4-star generals and tell them, you guys have been wrong about everything you've been doing. Get out of every war, pull all of our troops back, and have the balls to say that to a bunch of guys who are probably pretty damn intimidating. We could talk all of our shit about Mad Dog Mattis or whatever we want, or anyone that's up there and say, oh, they're dumb with the things that they say. But when you're there in a guy in full uniform, regalia, all of that,
all the badge,
representing the combined might of the most powerful military force on the planet.
And there's a group of them, and you're telling them that your life's work has been incorrect. And I am now going to tell you to not do it, which I believe Trump tried to, and they lied to him. So, I don't envy any of their positions.
Well, and you saw that, and it's just to give a historical context on this. John F. Kennedy dealt with this.
Yep.
When he came in, I mean, because he followed Eisenhower, who's, Supreme Allied Commander World War II, right? I mean, he follows that mess, and you get the Bay of Pigs, and you get the Cuban Missile Crisis. And then you have Johnson right after him, who just was so insecure about anything and everything pertaining to anything military. He knew what he wanted to do at home, but anything military, he was like, whatever you guys
hands
want,
off,
right?
hands off, all yours.
Right, I'll bomb whatever you want. Just tell me.
It helped that Kennedy was in the military and was a pretty decorated guy. I was not a JFK fan until I read Killing Kennedy by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard, and just the stories of JFK's heroism. I still don't agree with a lot of the policy things he wanted to do. Man has my respect.
Oh my gosh, John F. Kennedy, what he learned from his mistakes. There would be no. The Cuban Missile Crisis happened because of the Bay of Pigs, right? But John F. Kennedy saved the world, literally, almost single-handedly saved the world because of what he learned during the Bay of Pigs, right? And he said he saw the deep state for what it was, and he said, "I'm going to scatter you to the wind," and they blew his head off. So, you know what I mean? It's like
when everyone was telling him, "Don't pick up that phone and call Russia," he told him, "Kick rocks. I am calling him right now to tell him we have nothing to do with this because this has gone way too far." That takes balls.
Now, let me tell you something. JFK was 43 years old when he won the presidency. That is 4 years older than Vivek Ramaswamy will be when he takes office. But you know what I mean? Like if he were to take office. And so there's something to be said about the strength in young hubris, right? Where it's John F. Kennedy had a daringness about him, why he was so heroic, why he, carried I don't know how many number of people on his back, after having broke his back in PT 109 and swam them to an island and got them saved, was just sheer balls. And it was sheer hubris. It was sheer, I am indestructible and I will do this thing that I am going to do, right? And there's something to be said for that. And I think, honestly, that's what made Trump a great president too, was he was a lot like Eisenhower in that people don't know this about Eisenhower. They think that he was this kind of like dotty, grandpa figure. He would purposely, he told people the same things that Trump would tell them. He would say, "Oh, you're going to attack us? I'm putting tactical nuclear missiles in the field and I will use them if you do this." Yeah. No, you don't understand. Here's a picture of your house, right? Just like Trump did, right? I will use them. And it was that bravado and them knowing he was the Supreme Allied Commander Europe in World War II that they were like, "Oh, he'll do it. Oh, so we better not," right? Trump had that a little bit of crazy in him, right? Where nobody in the world, I mean, the whole media narrative was that he's going to blow up the world, right? And he ends up being the most, non-warfare president we've had, since Ike, really, and so it is a challenge for Vivek. But what Vivek has that Donald Trump doesn't have, because I don't know that you can call Donald Trump an insider, but he's not an outsider anymore. No. He is his own special thing. And that will be his both his strength and his weakness. Because there were people who will never, ever vote for that man. And there might be enough of them that keep him out of office. But Vivek, when he talks about, America First 2.0 and all this kind of stuff, he believes all of that stuff, but he also has one of the times that I was most disappointed in Trump was on the debate stage, and he got the question about CRT, right? And he just, right? Part of that was Chris Rufo, because he didn't tell him the right thing. He should have pointed him towards DEI and we wouldn't be having the problems we're having now, which I told him that, by the way. But it's that it's just a difficult concept to get. Trump knew it was bad. He knew it in the gut, right? He knew it down here. And he just said, oh, I know it's bad. I don't really need to know why. I got more important things to do. Let's stop it and let's move on, right? That's his mindset. Vivek has that mindset, but he actually knows the things at the same time. And these things, if you haven't noticed, guys, in this culture war, whatever you want to call it, things are always shifting. Nothing stays stagnant because the left has no ideological foundation. They have no value system.
And that's the postmodernism. Take words and give them new meanings, spread it out. Everyone uses that word now.
Yep. And that's what they do. And so Vivek picks up on that the way I do, the way James does, the way you might.
Yep.
It's kind of inbred into us now because we had a more malleable brain. We're not 80 years old, right? And we lived through it. And we can identify it in a way that someone who's 80 just absolutely cannot. You know what I mean? And so I think that's where Vivek's real strength is. I think he's a great communicator. I think DeSantis is the weakest candidate in the field. And I think that's why they were trying to, use the last 6 months to build him up, right? To beyond what it is he actually is. And I'm not saying he can't win. I'm not saying he's not good. I'm just saying that out of the three, he's the weakest candidate in the field. You put
at this point, I'm saying DeSantis can't win. At this point, I'm saying Ron DeSantis can't win the primary. Unless something catastrophic
I really don't think so.
Unless something catastrophic goes on, I think DeSantis can't win. And I also think, everyone was criticizing Trump for coming out and declaring so early as running for president, right? Look at it now. How genius was that? He has made Ron DeSantis had to run a shadow presidential campaign since that moment and has exposed everything DeSantis is not a true candidate anymore. I honestly don't see him that way because I think there's been enough cracks. I think people, like you pointed out, Twitter has made it a cesspool. DeSantis was the cool guy for a little bit. Now, who wants to talk about DeSantis at all? You can't ask questions. And I feel like someone like Christina Pushaw could have been a really, really good mouthpiece and ally for DeSantis and made him strong. And I think she's doing a disservice to him. And I don't think she's a moron. I just think she thinks she's doing what's right. And if Christina was smart, she would call off all these dogs and stick to his policies and stop doing all the dumb things. And like you said, stop trying to be Trump. Trump is only Trump. DeSantis is not Trump. DeSantis is a much better politician than Donald Trump. So
which turns people who like Trump off.
Yep. Yes. And the thing is, and I think Christina could be much better using her talents as a communicator because she's really good at that on Twitter.
She's great.
With just sitting there and only pointing out what he's done well with Florida and what he would do on a national scale as president. She could be valuable. Even if she switched it up now, she could help save his campaign. But as of now, I see his campaign floundering.
I don't think he can win. I think that he is too connected to the Bushes. He's too connected to that whole. He's Chris Christie, right? You know what I mean? Like that's what he reminds me of.
I mean, Chris Christie said he's the only guy that could beat Trump.
Oh, right, and he can fit through a door without help, right? I mean, okay, because whatever. Nobody
both went the same direction.
We're talking about
guys. No fat shaming, guys.
Dude needs to lose some poundage, but it's coming from a former fat guy myself and still chubby. Okay, so but DeSantis, the people around DeSantis have done him a disservice. And there's too many people that saw him as the heir apparent and tried to attach themselves to him and then make names for themselves as opposed to making a name for him, that it's really turned people off. And the rank and file are just not going to follow him down the road he's going when it comes, because he tries to remain above it all. But what people liked about Trump was that he would get down there. If somebody needed an axe to drop, Trump was the guy who actually dropped the axe, right? Vivek does the same thing. It's like, I mentioned to Vivek several times, and like DeSantis is copying everything you do 2 or 3 weeks after you do it. Literally. I mean, he was, and still, whether it's the announcements, CDBCs, the SVBs, all this stuff, right? ESG, all the acronyms, right? And Vivek's like, yeah, you're right. I'm going to go out there and say that, right? I mean, it didn't necessarily, it wasn't the most well-received thing he said. No. But people now have it in the back of their mind of going, I can see this.
Like you said, Trump going to East Palestine and getting people McDonald's. That was massive. Vivek having to admit that he gave a large amount of money because Tim Pool pressed him on it. In the Culture podcast, where he had to, sheepishly admit that he gave a bunch of money because he didn't want to go down there and be seen as someone doing what Trump just did. So he did it in his own way. What did DeSantis do for the people of East Palestine? I mean, and I get it. He's the Florida governor right now, so he's kind of tied to only being able to do things for Florida. And that's the issue with him not declaring, right? Because
it's also the issue you're running against a former president of the United States, right? I mean, see, that's what Vivek
and the current one as well with Biden.
Right. But you know, Biden is a Biden. I think JFK Jr. might run away.
RFK Jr.
RFK Jr. Might run away with that. But which would be a very interesting thing.
Just because he's anti-COVID-19 vaccine, he's not based.
Everybody,
no, right? Needs to stop praising RFK Jr. The guy is a climate psycho. He is Tom Steyer or whatever the hell his name is, just that doesn't like the COVID vaccine. Can people on the right stop praising everyone that like one thing that we like?
Yeah, it's not possible.
Stupid.
That's an impossible challenge.
Or beating up on people who dislike one thing you like. Right? You know what I mean? That's the other part of it, right? The right is becoming very intolerant of its own people and of discussion about things.
I quickly want to move on from Vivek, even though I think we could do a whole podcast about Vivek's presidency. But we're going to go long, but I'm okay with it because I freaking love this podcast at this point, as long as you're okay with it.
No, I'm good, man. Let's talk.
Cool.
I
want to just go fairly quickly, run through our last part. I want to talk about Christian nationalism, controlled opposition, which I'm almost throwing school choice into that controlled opposition category because I'm more believing now more than ever that it might be a controlled op. But I want to start off with Christian nationalism.
Okay.
Some people might hear this. I'm a Christian. You're a Christian. David's a Christian. And we might think Christian nationalism, how could that be a bad thing? A bunch of Christians. We're a, Judeo-Christian nation already. But that's where our foundation is, even though we're, secular, but that's our foundation. So how could a Christian nationalist country be a bad thing? What would you say to a Christian nationalist country and why it's a bad thing? I see you raising an eyebrow.
For starters, they're the predominant pushers of the national divorce narrative, which I think is idiotic. If you listen to Michael O'Fallon, who runs around with James a lot, and James himself, Lindsay, Sovereign Nations. I mean,
very good.
They are the antithesis to the thesis in the Hegelian dialectic.
Yes, they are.
They build themselves not just as Christian nationalists; they build themselves as white Christian nationalists, right? And that is for starters. Once you inject an identity class, you're woke to me. You're done. I don't care whether you say you're a white nationalist or a black nationalist or whatever it is. If you're injecting a gender nationalist, whatever you want to be, if you're injecting that qualifier, your identity into this, that's use. Placing that above being an American, which absolutely should not happen, and above being really even a Christian, because what comes first? White. Okay, so I mean that's the first thing. But they're pushing this national divorce narrative, and what I've been saying for a little bit is it's the left that disrupts, but the right that dismantles. When you were talking about disrupt and dismantle, that's what they were saying. The left doesn't necessarily have the moral cojones. Okay, to actually start ripping some of these, they'll infest them and take them over, but the right will rip them down. And like I said on Tim Pool, the only thing standing in the way of the WEF, the globalist takeover of the world, is the Constitution and the United States of America. If we split and we balkanize into what they did in Yugoslavia, the world is done. We're done. Okay, because that means the American experiment has failed. We will start to war between each other. We will become another Europe, which is what they wanted to prevent. Jefferson wanted to prevent this when he went beyond his character and what his normal political thought would be and say, I'm going to just, double the size of the country in one fell swoop, right? No, he said, if we're going to be here, I'm not going to allow this to become Europe because he just left Europe, or he knows what Europe is and the conflicts that come over Europe. And we saw that in World War I and World War II. And, we had to come and save that out, right? That's what the Christian nationalists are wanting to do to the United States. And they're just the antithesis to the BLM movement is the way I see them. And now I'm not saying Vivek uses some of this language, and I've actually gotten on to him about it, saying, hey, you might want to just realize what it is you're flirting with here. Although I know he doesn't think of it this way. The way he thinks of it is really in the purest sense of Christian nationalism, right? Which I like the word Americanism because I think that is more accurate. And I'm trying to get him to, maybe take that on, but it's basically patriotism. It's a love for country, unapologetic love for country. That's one way to view nationalism. The other way to view nationalism, especially if you put the word white in front of it, is Nazi, right? And
that's what it's taken as. Absolutely.
Right. And that's what the left has been conditioned, and really a majority of the country have been conditioned, just like you were talking about earlier, to think that when you hear the words white Christian nationalists, right? So why play into...
Even though Nazism was not Christian at all, but that's okay. Even though Nazism was not Christian.
No, not at all. But it was socialist, it was nationalism. It was rooted in Marxism, right? But it had the identitarian component to it. Oh, sound familiar? Right? I mean, it's and then you add the fascist part of it, but it's, which can get into school choice, but it's that's why I don't like about the Christian nationalists. I think that those of us who can see beyond, because I think there are people who use it genuinely, but then there are people who are ignorant of it and see and use it, they're reactionaries to what the woke left is doing. So I've got to go completely the opposite way. And it's like, no, that's what they wanted you to do.
Yes.
Your reaction is the action, right? That's what they're going for. And if they can get you, it's January 6th, right? It's exactly okay. We're going to piss you off. We're going to riot for, however many months. We're going to burn down St. John's Church and set fire to Washington, D.C. Nobody's going to say a damn word about it. It was mostly peaceful, right? And then you're going to break through some doors on the Capitol. You're going to stay in the rope line. You're going to have the cops lead you to the Senate or the House well, and you're going to be put in prison for 4 years and called an insurrectionist. That is repressive tolerance. But that's what that was only made actionable because they riled people up and got their reaction, right? That's what happened. And so I just tell anybody who's, and I know people who I think of fondly or to consider friends or at least acquaintances that have this kind of bend to them. I'm just like, guys, what you're doing, you separating off and becoming like a Waco or whatever you want to talk about, and then, having your own commune. And I was like, you're first of all, you're just putting a big target on your back, right? And you're becoming what it is that they want you to be. And so they can target you easier, right? So don't do that. It's stupid. If you want to be a patriot, be a patriot. If you want to be an American, promote Americanism. If you want to promote unapologetic Americanism, promote it unapologetically, right? If you want to not be an identitarian, say I'm an American first and whatever else I am second, right? And you can do that without using the verbiage that triggers people and makes people stop listening to you. Yeah. Right. And that is, now Vivek is a strange cat because he's brown, right? You know what I mean? And so he's got honestly, the sad fact is he's got a little bit more leeway to play with it. But I still think that it's just a dangerous narrative. We do not need to be reacting to what the woke does. We need to set our own goals, and we need to act on our own plans and be intentional about them and see them through and not just constantly reacting to what the woke left is doing. So that's what I would say about Christian nationalism. Don't be stupid. It's like they don't tell you don't carry your gun in your pocket, right? Because it's not made to be put there. It can catch and shoot you in the leg. Right? Yep. Don't.
Yeah. It's really funny. I kind of feel like that whole meme where it's a chart where it's like the bell curve, that one's always consistently done almost perfectly and captures a lot of things that happen, because people will think, because this action's happening, they give them the reaction basically. And that's kind of like the midwit category where you're thinking about it a little bit too much. And I know midwit's negative connotation, but that's basically what the meme is. Right. And then you have the geniuses or the one that's really looking into it more, and they basically say the same thing as the simple man who's just like, I kind of just want to grill. and their reaction is just, what, this is stupid, like I'm just going to mock it, or I'm just not going to care about it, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. And that plainly works more basically all of the time than whatever that middle category wants to do.
Right. Well, and it's also just a matter of whatever it is that they're pushing you to do. That's when you should stop looking at anything they're doing and go, what else is going on? Right? What is this masking? It's like, when do you remember, this may seem like ancient history, the Chinese balloons?
Yep.
Do you remember those? What was happening then? East Palestine was happening then.
Yeah, exactly.
East Palestine was happening at the exact same time.
Yep.
And those balloons have been flying over the United States I don't know, through at least 3 presidents, okay? And we never heard about them, but all of a sudden, Chinese balloon, giant mushroom chemical cloud in Ohio.
That you know what I mean? Created and caused as a controlled chemical bomb. I don't know what the hell they were thinking with that one. They didn't care. It was a red area that voted for Trump.
And it's also anything that they can do to push the environmental, narrative they're going to do. You know what I mean? And never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yep.
Right. No. I mean, that's what and that's the problem though, but they'll create crises. That's the thing. And when we talk about Christian nationalism, or we talk about the right end of the spectrum, that's what I fear that the right has started to do. And you see this in some of the complaints we made about DeSantis, right? Where you're trying to manufacture this thing, right? But you're also just seeing it in general of this outrage over Dylan Mulvaney. There would be no Dylan Mulvaney if it weren't for the right. There wouldn't. I mean, he may be out there and he went to the White House, okay? And you can use that type of person as an example, okay? But harping on him to the point that it becomes most people wouldn't know who he is if it weren't for the right. Let me say that, okay? Especially anybody on the right end of the spectrum. You know what I mean? He wouldn't be as big of a deal as he is. Now, that big deal is making. I mean, it's providing good context. It's providing, hey, this is ridiculous. This is a man pretending to be not a woman, but a girl.
People don't realize
and
that.
Promoting it. And I think the issue is, and I think this is one reason why Dylan Mulvaney is a little bit different to me because of who he's targeting, right? We didn't give a shit about RuPaul for years. And we still don't care about RuPaul. RuPaul is someone I grew up with, you grew up with, and RuPaul has only targeted other adults and did the drag show stuff and out there. No one gave a shit about RuPaul. We still don't. Dylan Mulvaney's a different case. I don't mind making the noise. Now, that's the way you make the noise about it, right? Yeah. Some people are just being morons about it. Yeah. But you got to make the noise in the right way, like what you're saying, and exposing and doing things that way. And I have to say one thing about the national divorce. David knows how I feel about national divorce. I think it's moronic. And one of the things I want to say to any people, because you're going to bring certain people out listening to the show. Some of them might be Christian nationalists that listen. And I have to say to anyone on the right that is thinking a civil war national divorce is a good idea, there's a good chance we'll lose. Here's why. Did you not get the example in the Summer of Love? The police aren't on your side. I don't care how many police that that are conservative, voted for Trump, this and that, they're not on your side. And who always is the ones that causes the problems, that enforces the regime's rules? It's not the military normally. It's the police that do it. And also, the military is not on your side. I hate to break it to you. The generals are all woke. A bunch of the leaders are woke. And you think a bunch of the rank and file are going to go against them? They're not. That's just the reality. You might have some that do it, but they're going to get shot in that situation on site. And it's going to scare the shit out of everyone. And also, lastly, they have all the tech, everybody. They are the tech people. Boston Dynamics is not on the right. They're creating humanoid freaking AI. All the drone technology, Silicon Valley, they have a lot. And I know people on the right, it's a similar thinking. And I'm not saying that the right is the South, because the South was a bunch of leftists. But it's a similar thinking with those on the right as, well, we play with guns all the time and we do this and we do that, so we'll be able to win. No, it doesn't take much to fire a gun, okay? Especially if it's a military, like a good rifle, a good...
Look at Tennessee.
Yeah, it's exactly. It doesn't take much. If you've ever fired a really nice rifle with a hair trigger, you don't feel it on your shoulder. It is a very little kickback. So it's not going to take much. And they have hubs already with the city centers. Now, the only way the right could win is if they choke them out as farmers, but that's where the drones come in. That's where the military. So it's like, it's a good chance the right would lose a civil war. So
I think it's almost guaranteed.
It is.
Actually, I think it's almost guaranteed. But defund the police wasn't about defunding the police. Defund the police was about entryism.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
It was about infiltrating and getting everyone out or as many out that they didn't agree with this ideology as possible, and replacing them with DEI offices and DEI and Chris Rufo. I love Chris. I try, but he he should have taken this on 3 years ago, because DEI has almost already done its job in most of the institutions that it exists.
Yep.
And now all it has to do is just play gatekeeper, right? And it doesn't have to have a DEI statement to do that anymore.
And we call it DIE on this show. It's DIE. It is not. It is DIE. It is DIE.
They're divisions of ideological enforcement. That's what I call them.
I love that.
Right? Yeah. But I call them DEI because they actually refer to it as God.
That is true.
Right? It is the, it is. There was a video of a representative here in Oklahoma who literally said, diversity, equity, inclusion is God, and she used that term, DEI, but that's how they view it. And this was also COVID when it came to schools. That's what people don't realize too, is that we have the largest retirement of teachers in, I don't know, maybe history.
Probably.
After COVID, because they scared away all of the older teachers. And the ones they didn't scare with COVID, they pushed out, because, you'd have a 30-year-old, teacher who's won Teacher of the Year 3 or 4 times, start to get put on remedial, stuff with their principals because they weren't doing the SEL and the DEI right. You know what I mean? And so they would just quit. So they push them out. And so these things were about entryism and clearing these spaces that you were talking about that will end up both indoctrinating and enforcing the ideology, which is the police and the schools. Which, if you want to get into school choice, now might be a good time to do that. I don't know if you want to take the time. But,
I'm ready for it. My body is ready.
Oh, are you sure?
Let's do this.
Because you may get canceled.
That's fine. Listen, we're on the same side here, because I think you've seen, we both, with Corey DeAngelis and James Lindsay arguing last night, I think we were both saying the same things to them. And, me and you
Corey
both
DeAngelis,
James on this.
I'm going to say this, and maybe I shouldn't, but I don't. Corey DeAngelis is a complete fraud. I if you look at his background, first of all, we're talking about a doctorate of education out of the University of Arkansas, which may be one of the most woke universities in the country that people aren't aware of.
Do you feel he's a controlled op? Because I feel like I'm getting more and more feeling like the people that are big on this, and and Betsy DeVos is a big part of it. I feel like they might be a controlled op. It's seeming that.
No, and I think DeVos was a Paul Ryan, Jeb Bush, hey, Trump, this would be a good person to. She ran for president,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was on the debate stage at one point. She was put out there for that reason, and Trump won. And you had Paul Ryan basically staffing his cabinet, and it's like, oh, here's a chance to push school choice. Yep. If we tell Trump it's good, he's not going to dig into it. Education is not high on his list, and it'll just go, and that's what ended up happening. And yes, I believe Corey DeAngelis is. If I want to talk about controlled opposition, and I could name one person, he's a snake oil salesman. Nothing he says stands up to the stress test of a falsification narrative. Everything he talks about does not fall in line with what his policies and what he's pushing are. First of all, did you know that Corey DeAngelis the next thing on his list is police choice? Do you know that?
What the fuck is that?
Oh, it's everything you thought it could be and more. What it is privatizing police departments. It's the, like the railroad police, right? Owned by corporations. Mm-hmm. Governments lease them out, and the citizens of the town or the municipality are now customers of that police department.
So private security.
Yeah. And so it's.
I mean, Michael Malice would be kind of happy about this, because Michael Malice has talked about basically getting rid of police and private security.
Yeah, but the problem is that then they're beholden to pays their check.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I call it, and I don't know if I didn't quite put this out yet, but he intends the same group of people that are trying to completely pull the wool over conservatives' eyes on school choice are going to now do the same thing, maybe not in the same way, but with the same message for police. I actually think that defund the police was meant to go that direction, but there was too much of a backlash. I really do. I think defund the police. If you look, he wrote a paper right before called Police Choice. And he talked about it on Tim Pool's show, where he's talking about, police choice. And even Tim Pool, who leans libertarian, and a lot of us is like, whoa, man, well, I don't know about that. You know what I mean? Like, but
well, Tim's not an idiot, and Tim's not your like hardcore one thing. Tim agrees with a little here, a little there, and he's not afraid. Tim's actually a political person. He's not just a shill, you know. And I think us three here are also just political people. I agree with certain things that, you know, I agree with libertarians, some anarchy, some a little bit of everything. I agree with some things that even a liberal might agree with at times, but you know, but you're not allowed to do that anymore.
No, you're not. But so Corey DeAngelis, and I want to make very clear about why I'm against school choice, and for anyone that's listening to this, because I am a conservative. I was raised a conservative, and when I say conservative, Reagan Goldwater conservative. Okay, I was raised a conservative.
I was a Rush baby, David.
Yes, I was a Rush guy. I mean, every morning on the way to school, Dad's listening to Rush, or the afternoon, whatever time it was. I mean, I was that. My dad voted for Pat Buchanan, okay? Right? I mean, like, you know what I mean?
My dad would quite literally scream Rush in the car. He would go, wrong! Yeah. My dad's a moron, but that's what he would do.
But that was the only voice back then, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it just was the only one. But school choice is not a conservative policy.
No.
School choice was created by two Marxists, and you can go, I put this up. Just Google the voucher left, right? Okay, it was created by two Marxist law professors. And where did critical race theory come from? It came from critical legal studies.
It's only a law theory. It's not in schools.
Oh, yeah. No, but what I'm saying is that's where it came from. And their whole goal was to redistribute wealth to create equity of outcomes in education. Kendi couldn't have written it better himself.
Yeah.
And you actually see Corey DeAngelis pre-2020 using the equity narrative, where he's, I put this up, where you see him, this creates equity. This is, you know, he will talk, if he's in front of a leftist group or somebody that might lean left, he'll use the equity narrative. So, or if he's in front of Republicans, he'll use the parents, you know, rights narrative. That, to me, first of all, you're a salesman. You're being paid to push something. First of all, and he's not a great academic. I've read a lot of his papers. He cites himself more than he cites anyone else, and it's like
that's a very leftist thing to do.
Right, because he brings up Milton Friedman and all this stuff, but it's like, this is not a conservative policy. This is a redistribution of wealth, first really championed and pushed by Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, right? I mean, Mitt Romney, okay? Come on, guys. Right? Are you freaking kidding me here? And conservatives have been so, first of all, Libs of TikTok is great. You know, the work James has done, Chris Rufo.
We've had Eyes Inside the Classroom has been on here. Eyes Inside the Classroom.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, you're a great prey. I've had him on my show, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
fantastic.
They're really showing a lot of the things that are happening that need to be shown. But if you look at it, most of it's in large metropolitan areas. Most of it's in blue states.
Yep.
Right? Most of it. Okay, I'm not saying it's not in, because trust me, I broke OU Children's, you know, doing underage, you know, transition surgeries in Oklahoma, but it's not a pandemic here, right? But these are all coming from very large places in the worst forms, and they use that away in the same way of the way that defund the police used the videos of black, you know, cops killing black people, right? If there were 200 incidents and, you know, 9 of them were considered, you know, unarmed, but you had 250 total, and you show all 250 within the space of 2 weeks, it's going to look like it's happening everywhere, right? That's what's kind of happened. I saw the police choice movement start to gain a little steam, and then they just got knocked back on their heels, right? And then you see the school choice movement. And here's the thing. I'm going to give you a little bit of inside baseball. I've talked to Corey DeAngelis. I have DMs. He's coming to town, all this other stuff. And, you know, I was working with the school choice think tank here in Oklahoma. And I wrote for them. I did a fellowship with them. And before I knew kind of and the vice president of this think tank, that's primary job is to push school choice, looked me in the eye and said, yeah, the only reason we're really interested in CRT is to sell school choice. And I looked at him and I said, and I was shocked. I was shocked. And I was like, maybe he didn't say that. Maybe it's just, I'm taking it the wrong way. And so I just kind of pressed. He's like, no, we have a board. That's what the board told us to do. And this is a good way to sell it. And then I started uncovering evidence of school choice people. Now let's talk about the woke left, right? Okay. Let's talk about this kind of a parallel of school choice Republicans, conservatives in quotations, manufacturing things out of whole cloth in order to get the influencers and the politicians behind the anti-CRT, DEI, gender ideology narrative,
yep,
right? Literally making stuff up. And there were times I uncovered that it was made up accidentally. And then I report on it and I get attacked by the people who are, and I was like, wait a minute, but this isn't real. And they're like, shut up. You know what I mean? I'm like, we have enough to work with, guys.
Yeah.
We don't need to make it up.
Yeah.
And you actually endanger the movement that is going to fight back against this thing if you make it up. But here's the thing that I realized. They didn't care about the movement.
Nope.
They didn't care about fighting back against the woke. They want to sell school choice, and they will not go after DEI. Rufo waited 3 years to go after DEI. He did it as soon as he got put in with DeSantis. He did it as soon as he got, some more name ID and helped Glenn Youngkin and made a name for himself. Then he goes after the actual apparatus that's enforcing this in our public and private spheres and actually knit them together in a public-private partnership. That is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Mm-hmm. And they waited too long because I was pushing this back in 2021. I was one of the only people doing it. And, me, James Lindsay, maybe, Charles Nagy, I hate that I forgot his name. His last name is Richardson. Richard, he's out of UT and was just a great guy. And we were pushing this stuff when nobody else was talking about it. Mm-hmm. And then, it becomes election season again, and here comes Rufo. Oh, now it's basically using all of my talking points on DEI, right? Which is great, but I think you're too late. I think it's done what it's going to do. And when he and I first got into it was about school choice, because I was asking him questions that I expected from my friend, or at least my colleague, or at least somebody I had a good rapport conversation with, to engage with me in a discussion debate, the way that intellectuals on the right, show pride in doing.
Are right? Supposed to, apparently.
And as soon as I started poking on it, he unfollows me. Right. Yeah. and this is somebody I'm like, so I DM'd him and said, why'd you unfollow me? He's like, oh, you're just annoying me with school choice. I'll refollow. Right. And then we had another kind of thing that was
so
kind of
petty
around that when it came to the OU children's issue and the gender stuff, because the governor here claimed that they banned it when they actually didn't. And they used that to pass $1.7 billion in ARPA money, which is all wrapped in ESG and is going to turn Oklahoma blue before too long. He did all of that, and I showed Chris Rufo, and I have the DMs to prove this. I'm not going to just spout off DMs, but I can show if you need it. Like, where I said they just enshrined the word gender ideology into state law. Not gender ideology, gender affirming care.
Mm-hmm.
And they just enshrined it in law. And now what are you going to do if they take this to court? What are you going to do? Because now you've just legitimized it in state law. And Chris blocks me. And literally 3 days later, he starts his big DEI push. And I'm just like, man, okay, Chris, I hope you're doing good things. I don't get to keep up with him anymore. I respect him. I think he's done amazing stuff. I will only speak the truth about my issues with Chris, but I will always praise him for what he has done because he deserves it. But he wouldn't be anything without James Lindsay. I will say that too.
And you know what the thing I don't get with things like that? Like, I get that the landscape at some point gets competitive when you become somebody, right? Like, I understand that. Like, Dave and I are nobodies. Like, you actually have a platform. You have a pretty good one. But I never understand why allyship is so difficult, right? Like, why is it so difficult for some people to, legitimately be cool with somebody. And even if you disagree, and even if you have no reason why you disagree, be friendly enough to DM back and be like, listen, I don't care what you have to say on this. Fuck off. Leave me alone. Like, I respect somebody more for that than just deading and being like, I don't want to hear that. Like, this is the way I feel. You're not going to change me. Buzz off with this. Like, and I don't want to take the Eric July approach where no one's my ally. I hate you all, even though I love Eric July and I think that's a great approach for him. But it's like, but there is no my team, and I've seen Michael Malice use that as well. Like, we're not on the same team. But I think there is a point where, and David heard this policy from me. Until I talk to you, I kind of don't, I take everything you say with a grain of salt, so I like you. We've talked before on DMs, and now that we're talking, like, obviously I see you, I'm looking at you, I'm talking to you, I'm understanding it.
We're real
people, right? Yeah. And I see people behind avatars, and it's like, I question, and then I just see their actions. And you've dealt with Corey DeAngelis. I didn't know him from a fly on the wall. Maybe, in my eyes, I don't know.
Nobody knew him.
Maybe Corey's a nice guy. Maybe Corey's a nice guy. Thinks he's doing the right thing. But from what I see, and with his interactions with people I do respect, because I've had very minor interactions with James, but James was kind enough to message me back a few times. Like, he doesn't have to do that. And just those minor interactions. And then I see him, and it's letting his minions and retweeting a bunch of his minions that are saying, oh, James doesn't have a plan. James doesn't know what he's talking about. When all you have to do is, granted, it is a graduate level college course to listen to new discourses, and they are chunks of time. But if you just listen to new discourses on his expansive work on Paulo Freire and what is going on with the schools, on his expansive work on what school choice could be as a Trojan horse, where James has said it is a good step, but it is not the first step. The first step needs to be getting control of the universities. And then we have an individual from the Heritage Foundation getting involved, Jason Bedrick, who I had no idea who the hell he is.
Oh my gosh.
But I like the Heritage Foundation. I think they do pretty good work. But then you have a guy like this who's sitting there going and trying to make the point that a very fractional group of schools, your very private schools, don't have to hire teachers with teacher certificates. But I'll ask this. How many teachers in those schools don't have teacher certificates? Yes, you can hire some of them that have just expertise in a certain field, and we'll bring them in because they're retired and they want to do this. But they are all hiring teachers because, you want to know why? Because they are convinced that they have the training on how to educate. And I saw another individual comment, because I was getting into it with the DeAngelis people last night, and they said to one of the people, they don't just learn education, they learn their subjects. And I went through a school of education, okay?
Me too.
And it's, yes, you learn your subject matter on the side, but you are also being taught strategies on how to be an educator. That is a universal thing when you're in a school of education. And because you don't know how to teach yet. So they're trying to teach you, and that's where they're getting indoctrinated, because they're using strategies of generative themes, of the dialogical method that Paulo Freire made famous. And that is in all the education schools.
Yep.
And the fact that people can't see this. And again, even if you're bringing somebody in from business, you think that business isn't woke, and you think that woke structure isn't there, and they haven't learned from that business area. So it's not hard to see. And the fact that people are pulling their wool over their eyes just to get, and this is the sheep mentality of the right now. This is what they perceive the right is doing. This is what they perceive as the good thing, as a good person on the right. So let's just follow school choice.
Yep. Well, it's also the fast food American mentality.
Yes.
Right. It's oh wait, I don't have to do anything, and you're going to fix the problem.
Yep.
Thanks. Right? It's like, I get a quick fix, and I put it in the microwave, ding, I'm done, and I move on, and it'll be good for my kids who are going to be out of school in 3 years, but I don't care about my grandkids or their kids or anything like that. And first of all, I am not Chris Rufo, I am not James Lindsay, I'm not Local Distance, I'm not Jordan Peterson, I'm not any of these people. I don't claim to be as intelligent, I don't claim to be as well versed in most of the things that they are all versed in. Okay. But here's what I have over all of them. I've taught and been in every type of school. I've been an administrator. I've taught at colleges during the turn of all of this stuff. And I could see through Corey DeAngelis almost immediately because the guy has never taught a day in his life. He studies education, but doesn't teach and has never taught a day in his life. He was trained to be a mouthpiece. That's what he was trained to do. He has an agenda. They pay him a lot of money to push that agenda, and he will say whatever it is that he has to say in order to push that agenda. Now, all the money behind it will get you guys like Chris Rufo. All the money behind it will get you guys, I'm not going to name any other names. Okay, but it'll
keep going.
No, because I don't want to cause problems where there shouldn't be.
Yes.
But yes. It's a lot of people just have bought into this narrative. Some of them are actually, liberals or left-leaning, sane liberals that would have gone after school choice for the very reasons that the left or that Kendi would, or that, for the equity reasons, or just for anything like that. But this whole narrative, I saw through it as a teacher and administrator who has worked both in public and private schools and universities, and I immediately saw the woke teacher pipeline. You can trace this back. I was one of the first people to talk about this, and I took huge flack because I was, again, working with School Choice TM Oklahoma. I was literally writing for them at that point. And when I started to question it, I got met with a worst pushback that I ever got from the most woke person I ever dealt with. And I argued with Kendi on Twitter. Okay. I mean, I argued with Joy Reid on Twitter. Right? The worst they do is just block you. No, the school choice people, like you saw with James yesterday, will mob you with ridiculous points that they make over and over again on 5 different threads.
A whole bunch of non sequiturs, a ton of non sequiturs. That's all they use is non sequitur.
And Corey DeAngelis, and I could show you this, sent me his 10 talking points when I asked him about my issues with school choice. Because when I first started to have issues, it's like, if you're a Christian and you're questioning God, what do? You go to a faith leader, right? You go to a pastor. You go to somebody who's got the knowledge you do not have or the experience you do not have. I went to Corey DeAngelis. I had a line with Corey, and he copy and paste me his talking points. And I said, okay, Corey, cool.
Let's get on this. Let's get into those.
What about these questions, though? Crickets. Okay, so then I started asking the questions out loud. And then I started, what has made me most effective in this is that I have been able to quickly pinpoint bullshit when it comes to a logical line of thought, right? And I do it quickly, and especially when it comes to education, because I breathe this stuff, right? I know this stuff. This is what I have a doctorate in, right? This is what I study. And it's also what I've experienced throughout my whole life. And when you don't answer the basic questions, or if you know your answer and you avoid them because you know your answer is going to make it less likely that your position doesn't become what policy or law, then I look at you and I say controlled opposition, because and then you dig into the background of this stuff and its connection to the WEF and UNESCO. Corey was working with UNESCO's technology, inclusive policy lab. Okay, this is
which is going to follow the sustainability goals of the UN and all that good stuff. Yep.
And here's the main point. But if I can distill everything about school choice, about why I don't believe it will not end public schools, it will end private schools.
Yep.
And it will take local government controlled public schools and turn them into globally government controlled schools. Because that, when you start, it's the university model, right? The university is funded by taxpayers, but is supported by private dollars, right? And you cannot regulate them. If we could regulate universities the way that we do K through 12 schools, you would see less woke universities. Have you seen one university, not even New College yet, has gone from woke to unwoke? Not one.
And the thing is, too, until we get ESG under control, why do we want to send kids to private schools? They're going to be beholden to ESG as a private entity. So it all comes full circle. We got to get the universities, the schools of education under control.
The woke teacher pipeline.
The woke teacher pipeline needs to be stopped. ESG needs to be stopped. And conservatives, You morons on Twitter, we could do more than one thing, guys. We don't have to sit there and I hate the whole thing. We could be focusing on more important things. Do more than one thing. We're capable. We're very capable of focusing and doing multiple things. This isn't an actual fight. This is an intellectual battle. You can fight multiple battles intellectually. You don't have to sit there and just focus on one thing, because the conservatives do that. We're stupid. They focus and laser focus on one thing and go, we got this victory against the left. And they're on to 10 new things branched off that are already more effective than the one thing you beat. So
well, and I want to say this before, and I feel like you're getting ready to close, but we got to get out of here soon. I know. Go for it. I have to say this. I have to say this. And they always talk about, well, what's your solution? First of all, there's no fast food fix to a complex system.
Nope.
Okay, especially one
that's doing this for 30 years, 40 years,
80 years, 60 or 80 years to move all this. But this is the way. So I'm going to practice what it is that you want Vivek Ramaswamy to do. If somebody is on a ledge, okay, and they have terminal cancer, right? But they're threatening to throw themselves off the ledge, okay? Do you sit and talk to them about the options to get rid of their cancer? Or do you pull them off the ledge, right? That's because I'm constantly getting this question, what's your solution? I have solutions. They're not fast ones, but they will actually work. And they actually use the Constitution of the United States, the federalism of the people, by the people, and for the people. It means conservatives got to get out their ass and not just say, oh, well, we've got, Mitt Romney to do it for us. Here we go, whatever. Right? But no, you pull the guy off the damn ledge. Then you deal with the cancer, because suicide may be an effective tool for pain management, but it also kills the patient.
Probably
that's school choice.
You got to block the leftist that's trying to push them, though, at the same time. The leftist is going to shove them off the ledge.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is that the ledge is school choice, and we're teetering on it. And what I'm saying is that it's a full-blown trap. It is exactly what the left wants, because it's the only – look at it. It is the only way that they can get control of all the schools is to inject government money into private schools. That's the only, because if it's a private company that never touches the government, then you have no worries. Right? At least you have that barrier of, to quote Mitt Romney, corporations are people. They have First Amendment protection, right? The minute you inject the money, you're
like
done.
The states get federal money for their roads, so now so many states are beholden to the federal government.
Exactly. It's a teat.
There it is.
And once you get put on, I could go all night, man. But what you're going to end up seeing is you're going to end up seeing the same school in 4 different boxes: Target, Walmart, Kmart, Dollar General. Right? You're going to see them all in the same box, but it's going to be the same store. But that's going to be your choice. It's going to be 4 A's, not A, B, C, D, E. It's just going to have a different box around it. And the other part of it is that it will completely turn every red state blue. And you notice they aren't trying to do this in blue states, not even remotely. I mean, Illinois, but that's because the governor there has signed on to it. I wonder why. You know what I mean? And so I don't want to beat you out. I don't want to keep you too long, but I just want to warn everybody. Don't take my word for it. Go in and look at the history of this policy. Go just like you should every single policy. Okay?
They're not that long.
And ask as many questions. But I will say this. If you get attacked for asking questions, ask them louder. Ask them louder. And you will pay for it. But we'll all pay for it if we don't. We all will. So we just have to be the people who actually talk about things.
It's like with video games. Once you start seeing enemies, you know you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a
even if they're wearing a costume of your team.
Exactly.
As long as they have the red dot the red bullet over their head, they're doing the right thing. But
that's right, man. That's right.
And one way to say, we started off, we talked about Tim Pool. I'm going to talk about one more time. He says the right thing. Do it for your kids. Do it for your kids' kids. Do it for the next generation. Because if you sit there and do nothing, the evil people are always doing something. And they don't stop. What is it? Alexander Solzhenitsyn, that communists never get tired. You may get tired. You may want to quit, but communists never get tired. They never want to quit. And whether we know it or not, which kids don't know it because we don't learn about communism in schools, this is Marxist communism. This is Maoist Red China. This is Pol Pot's Cambodia. This is what is going on. And if you don't know any of the things that I just said, please go look all of them up, because this will wake you up, and tell as many people as you can to learn about this stuff independently. Because if people start to read and learn about, don't scare them with Marxism. Don't say Marxism. Don't even say communism. Just say, hey, listen, there's been screwed up stuff that we didn't learn through in history. Yep. Go look it up. Go look up Maoist Red China. Go look up the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, Pol Pot. Go read the Gulag Archipelago. Go read some excerpts, because it's 26 volumes. It's an insane thing. But go read a little bit of the Gulag Archipelago. Read excerpts. Yes. Yeah, that happened in Russia, but just don't worry about that. Just go read about it. Yep. It'll open up people's eyes.
It really will, man. It really will. And also just understand that the CCP is a threat, because it mixes the communism and the
fascism. It basically is fascism. It's public-private partnership. Yep. But anyway, we do have to jump out of here. This was one of the longer podcasts we did, but man, I couldn't stop. No. Listen, I'm fine with that. I like it. I thought we got a lot of good stuff talking about, wokeness, Vivek, and then all the controlled oppositions. Dave, we planted our flag again. Fuck Corey DeAngelis. But Corey DeAngelis, but really, Corey, and you guys, we talk some shit about you. That's fine. Come on the show, Corey. I would love to talk.
He won't do it.
I know.
I've invited him on my show, and he won't do it.
I would love to have Chris Rufo on. I would love to have all these people on that maybe are too big for this show right now, but I would love to have you guys on, because we did say some things. I want to hear your defense of it. I want to hear what you have to say, because I want to talk, because maybe you do have something that I don't know that is a reason why you're doing this. And if you could look at us and say, yes, this was the base of it. School vouchers, it was started by two Marxists, but this is what I have found, and this is why people on the right should get behind it, because I see this. If you could do that, bring it to us, please, because we want to hear it, because it's important. Dave, you got something to say? Go for it.
Yeah, I did want to get a last word in, not exactly about school choice, but I did. This is why I like having these shows, especially with EVS last week and now UnWokable now, is there is such a vacuum, not only for creative stuff and entertainment, but just people saying simple yet effective things, or actually digging into things. Guys, most of the people that they're sending are not their best. These are not very smart people. There's a huge vacuum of just general intelligence, or just speaking somewhat logic.
Read a little.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll know more.
Read more, tweet less.
Exactly. So there's just this huge vacuum of just getting a little bit of knowledge, or just creating. And you could do so much right now in America, even though there's so much that might be a little bit blackpilling, but instead of being blackpilled, just go and do something, and you'll probably be pretty effective, at least to some margin.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely read their own literature, because then you'll know it better than they do, because none of them read it. They just get told what to know. But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. UnWokable. It was awesome having you on. We're going to have you on in the future again.
Anytime, man. You're going to come on my show too. So
I love it. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, both of you.
Love it. Thanks, this was awesome. Again, UnWokable, the UnWokable Podcast. You can go find him on Twitter at UnWokable Podcast, and definitely go follow him. He's a great follow. He's one of the leaders and champions. He might have not put himself up there with James and all them, Pete Lindsay and stuff, but I certainly would, because he has original ideas. He doesn't just parrot. He doesn't just echo. You'll get new information. You'll get great information from him. And he's extremely accessible. If you have a question, go message him. He's not one of those people that's going to let you sit in his messages. Okay. So go out there. Man. Awesome people. We're doing a lot of good things here. And if you like the show, give us some love, like, share, follow, all that good stuff. Spread this word of mouth. Find us on the socials. Go search the Alex Questa Show. We'll be back next week. So long, y'all.